Inhlamvu siqhathanisa yona ke inhlamvu kunokuthize noma ke ama-marks athize ozowabheka owaziyo ukuthi lawo ma-marks lawo ke ama-marks angenziwa ke isibhamu esithize noma ongaphakathi kusona ke isibhamu ngenkathi isibhamu sasenziwa ke uthola ukuthi mhlawumbe khona okuthize okwenzeka ngesikhathi sokwenzeka kwesibhamu yilawo ma-marks ke uma uwathola kwinhlamvu azopholela ekuthini usho ukuthi la ama-marks enziwa yisibhamu esithize.
Okay. And there is also what is referred in your industry as rifling pertaining to firearms. What is rifling?
Rifling is the twisting of the grooves inside the barrel of a firearm.
Right. Okay.
Masikhuluma ngaloko kubizwa ngokuthi ke i-rifling ke ngokwamathemu ala kwibhamu ulokhu ujikaka noma ke ukutwista okwenzeka ngaphakathi ke kusona isibhamu.
Right. Now, you've testified that the firearm, the exhibit firearm here is an auto-loading double-action center fire pistol. Can you briefly explain that?
Explain there.
This auto-loading double-action center fire pistol, because I'm not familiar with firearms.
My lord, when we refer to a center fire, we are referring to a firearm that has the firing pin that strikes in the center of your cartridge case, on the primer of it.
Oh, okay.
Mana ke uma sikhuluma ke nge-center sikhuluma ke ngesibhamu lana esithi uma sidubula bese sishaya ke kanye la ngasemuva noma ke kuloko kubizwa ngokuthi yi-center yalo igobolondo noma i-cartridge.
And when you're referring to a semi-automatic is a firearm that for every shot you fire, you have to pull the trigger. So in case of a pistol, what you do is you cock the firearm, you pull the trigger, it fires a shot, the slide cycles, it loads, it ejects the fire cartridge case, it loads another firearm. You must release the trigger and pull it again. It becomes a semi-automatic. Where when you are referring to a full automatic, in full automatic, you just pull the trigger once, it continues shooting until you release that trigger.
Masikhuluma ngayo ke i-full automatic yona ke ila obamba khona ke iyaqhubeka ke nje yona ke iyayidubulela kuze kube isikhathi la uyeka khona kodwa yona ke i-semi automatic ila khona ke uma udubula ke bese yena ke uyasikhoka futhi ke isibhamu siyabuyela futhi uqhubeke umehluko yilowo.
And you have also referred to pattern matching. What is pattern matching?
The pattern matching in terms of the theory of identification is you look at the pattern marks that are transferred to a firearm. You have different patterns. It depends on what type of a mark is it.
Yes.
With a bullet, on bullet mostly, we look at the striations because your bullet passes through the barrel of a firearm. In case of a pattern, it's when the imperfection is on your breech face or maybe the shape of your firing pin has got a specific pattern that will always be transferred to all the exhibits, cartridge cases, which were fired in that firearm.
Uma sesikhuluma ngayo ke i-pattern match kuya ngokuthi ke yini esalelayo noma yiwaphi ke ama-marks noma ke wabiza ngokuthi ama-striation noma yiwaphi azosalela ke noma kuyona ke inhlamvu noma kuyona ke igobolondo noma ke lokubizwa ngokuthi ke i-cartridge uma ngabe udutshulwe.
And there is also what is called, and I believe that is the method that you applied in examining, comparing, and coming to the conclusions with regard to the exhibit bullet in this case, that which is said to be consecutive matching striae or consecutive
the CMS.
Matching striations, yes. So we'll call it CMS from here. Do you know about it?
That's correct, Madam.
Yes.
Yebo ke i-CMS ngiyayazi.
And for us also that are not holistically learned, please explain what CMS means and how does it operate when you do the comparison.
My lord, the CMS, as I've explained, are the consecutive matching striations which are created by the barrel of firearm as your bullet passes through the firearm. When you do your comparison microscope, when using the 3D,
yes,
you're expecting at least to say that there's sufficient agreement of marks on your bullet. It's when you see 6 matching striations or maybe a set of 3 matching striations, 2 sets of 3 matching striations on your bullet, and they must be relatively on the same positions.
okay.
Lana uma sikhuluma ngayo ke i-CMS ila ubheka khona ke ama marks athizeke suka kuyona ke inhlamvu isibhamu ephumela kuyona ke inhlamvu futhi ke kufanele ube nama set amabili ke amathathu ukusho ke kuwena ke ukuthi unokwaneleke ukuthi ke yebo ungathi ngithole lokho.
And those striations that we are looking for identification are contained within a specific groove of the projectile. Is that correct?
Within a specific meaning, that's why I'm saying they must be in the same relative position.
Okay.
Ingakho ngisho ke ukuthi kufanele kube sendaweni eyodwa noma endaweni ethize eyodwa.
And then you've said that you are looking for a set of 6 matching striations in the same relative position, or a set of 2 by 3 consecutive matching striations within the same relative position.
It can be 6 matching stria on one groove, and
Yes.
it can have 3 matching stria, set of 2, 3 matching strias on different grooves, but they must be on the same relative same position. Like if you have groove 1 that has at least 3 matching strias, and on the other groove, let's say groove 3, there's another 3 matching strias. On both items, they must be on the same grooves. It must be groove 1 and groove 3. So those are what we call the same relative positions.
Uma ukhuluma ke ngendawo ke eyodwa ukuthi kufanele ke ulindele ukuthi zibe sendaweni eyodwa asithi ke unazo ke groove 1 eziwu3 ubheka ke indawo la zitholakala khona noma ubheka ke enye futhi ke nayo ke indawo le otholakala kuyona lezi eziwu3 kufanele kube indawo eyodwa naleya yokuqala.
Now, is there a standard that 6 matching stria? The standard that is used, they must be consecutive without a break. So when you count them on the exhibit bullet, on the test bullet, it's what we call the railway tracks. They must align with each other. They must match this side and that side, and they must be of the same, as you said, width, peaks, ridges, furrows, and the like. Is that my understanding of how you apply this theory?
When you say they must be on the same groove,
No, I say the consecutive. Say, for example, you're talking about the 6 matching striations. That will be, we are looking for 6 on the exhibit bullet, matching the 6 on the test bullet to come to our conclusion that this exhibit bullet was fired on this exhibit firearm, right?
my lord, when you align them on
Yes.
your microscope, when you
Yes.
see both of them,
Yes.
the striations must align.
Yes.
If it's 6 matching strias, they must align, all 6 of them must align. Even if there might be spacing, the spacing on the left must be equal to the spacing on the right. And if there's gap, you count your striation lines. If there are 6, it's enough to make it positive.
Lana ke uma uqhathanisa noma ke futhi usulinganisa kubheka kufanele ukuthi ke kulingane noma futhi kube sendaweni eyodwa nokuthi uma ke kunokuvuleka noma ke ama gaps akhona ke kodwa uma uwabala uthole ukuthi ke awu6 lokho kukutshela ukuthi ke anele.
I think, Captain, we're gonna be confused. Let me continue with this, and when we come to your charts, we'll ask them to be beamed here, and we'll look at your results on the aspect where you said, I found 6, we will do that exercise. On the other one where you said, I found 5, we'll do the same exercise, count them in court, so that everybody is on the same page and we understand what you are talking about. And similarly, on the 2, you'll say, on this one where I found 2, it's this one and this one. And then we can understand how this CMS really should be applied. So let me continue with my cross-examination. Now, back to the terminology that you also use. When you examine a bullet, sometimes there are what are called skid marks or slippage marks. What is a skid mark and what is a slippage mark?
My lord, when a shot is fired and your bullet is inside the chamber, it's in the cartridge inside the chamber, a shot is fired, the minute your bullet leaves the chamber, it gets into the barrel of the firearm. when you speak of slippage, your bullet, it slips into, it doesn't go into not the chamber, into the barrel straight. It slips before it gets into the chamber, into the barrel. So you will have the skid marks when it slips, or the slippage before it gets into the chamber, into the barrel.
Yes.
So those marks will be different, will create some other markings that are it's difficult sometimes to match the skid marks or the slippage markings on your exhibits. Because you can see all firearms, when you shot, instead of getting into the barrel, they slip a little bit and then they, because what you're looking at the barrel is, normally the barrel is a little bit bigger in diameter than your bullet. So when it leaves the chamber, after the shot is fired, it slips and then it gets into the chamber. Because the barrel is a little bit bigger, the barrel will grip it so that it can go through all the grooves. So the slippage is when it leaves the barrel, the chamber, and getting into the barrel.
Lama marks ongibuza ngawo noma ke ukhuluma ngawo ke ama slippage nama skid marks isikhathi ke la khona ke uma usudubula ke bese kuthi manje ke inhlamvu lena engaphakathi kulona igobolondo isiyaphuma kuyona ke i-chamber iya manje kule la ngaphambili kusona isibhamu lokho kubizwa ngokuthi ke i-chamber yilawo ma-marks akhuluma ngawo.
And how does the slippage or the skid mark affect the carrying of the marks onto a bullet?
Onto the bullet?
Yes.
It can create markings which are different from the, and those markings, as I said, it's difficult because your slippage will not happen exactly the same way.
Yes. So
it will change. It will create the markings which will sometimes be impossible to match with the firearm, but you will see that there's a slippage on this bullet.
Ama marks ke lawo azohluka ke kuya ngokuthi ke kwenzeke kanjani ke ingawenza ke ama marks azohluka ke kusona isibhamu.
So in other words, the slippage or the skid mark will create inconsistent markings. The markings won't be the same on a particular bullet to bullet.
That's why I said it's difficult to can match the slippage markings. Those markings, it's difficult to can match them and say that they were fighting the same firearm.
Ingakho ngishilo ke ukuthi lawo ma-marks lawo abizwa ngokuthi ke ama-slippage ke kunzima ke ukuthi kuwaqhathaniseke ukuthi cha kusetshenziswe isibhamu esithize.
And what we must understand is not all the firearms will have the slippage.
Yes.
It will depend on the firearm. If the firearm has been misused or it's been used many times and it's starting to worn out, that's where you will find mostly the slippage on the firearm. But the new firearms, you will hardly find the slippages on them.
Futhi ke ngeke ukuthole lokho kuzona zonke ibhamu kuya ngokuthi ke isibhamu sisetshenziswa kanjani futhi ke nakangakanani kodwa ibhamu ezintsha ke ngeke ukuthole lokho noma ke amathuba ukuthi ke ungathola ke lokho mancane kakhulu.
Sorry, don't ballistics refer to that slippage as you are trying to explain to us? That language, they use the language indeterminate. Have you ever heard of that?
Well, indeterminate is when
Yes.
you do your comparison, you can see the markings, but they're not
That's it.
enough, sufficient enough
That's it.
to can say they were fighting the same firearm. With the slippage, you can see the slippage markings, but those markings also, you cannot determine whether, so we make it inconclusive. If you have only the slippage, you don't have proper markings. You can make it inconclusive also, or indeterminate.
Kule gama ke inkantolo ibiza indeterminate ukuthi ke lapho uyabona ke noma ke uyakwazi ke ukubheka ke kodwa ubusuyathola ke ukuthi cha le impawu noma lama marks ke lana ke awanele ukuthi ke ungasho noma ke usikhuphe isinqumo ngokuphelele ukuthi cha kwenzeke kanjeni.
Sorry, I've got to understand this. When you say inconclusive, what do you actually mean?
Inconclusive it means that you can have positive inconclusive or negative inconclusive.
Right.
When it's positive inconclusive, you have markings, similar markings, but are not sufficient enough to can say that it's exactly this firearm that has fired. So, because of your markings are not sufficient enough, you can just say that it's inconclusive, meaning you cannot determine that this bullet was fired in this firearm.
Irrespective of the other characteristics contained In the
with the
bullet.
class characteristics,
Yeah,
you
I
can
get-
see the class characteristics.
That's it.
The class characteristics, let's say it's all the CZ75 will have 6
Yeah,
right
as you said,
twisted,
yeah. Right twisted, yeah.
cartridges. Those are the class characteristics.
Yes.
So you cannot make a bullet positive on class characteristics.
Okay.
You need to look at the individual markings,
Right.
which are made by the firearm also. So you can say that the class characteristics matches based on the class characteristics, only class characteristics, but there's no individual markings. So they are not sufficient enough. You can just say that it's inconclusive. You cannot conclude by saying this is the right firearm that was used.
La uma ukhuluma ke ngayo inconclusive usho ukuthi ke yebo kukhona ke okubonayo kodwa ke ngoba ke kungenama marks athize abhekiwe noma ke kufanele ukuthi atholakale abonakalayo ke lana awukwazi ke ukusho ukuthi cha ke iyakusho lokhu ke ngesiqinisekiso ingakho ke kusetshenziswa igama elithi inconclusive akwanele.
Let me just jump onto that one before I go to the next aspect, this aspect of inconclusive finding. In simple terms, when an examiner says, I have examined, we are talking about our case here, I've examined the exhibit bullet and I examined the firearm that was handed to me as having emanated from one of the accused persons in this case. Having examined that firearm, I come to the conclusion that it is inconclusive. In other words, you are saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, I cannot say for sure either way that this is the firearm that shot this particular bullet or this is not the firearm that shot that particular bullet. Are we on the same terms there?
It depends on your conclusion. You can say it's positive, inconclusive. I can see the similarities,
Yes.
but they are not sufficient enough.
Yes.
So that will make it inconclusive, or positive, inconclusive. And you can say that I can see the class characteristics, the grooves, diameter of the grooves are the same, the number of your twistings, the grooves are the same, the width are the same, but I cannot see any similarities here. Then you can make it negative, inconclusive, because there's nothing that matches.
Kuya ngokuthi ke utholeni ke ngoba ke mhlawumbe usungathola ke ama class characteristics noma usungathola wona ke ama grooves lawo kodwa ke noma uma ubheka ke usho ukuthi cha yebo kukhona ke engikubonayo kodwa ngenxa yalokho ke engikubonayo ke akwanele ke ukuthi ngingasho ngesiqiniseko ukuthi isona ke lesi sibhamu noma cha akusona ke lesi sibhamu lesi.
Let me give you 3 examples, all of them inconclusive. When there's some agreement of the individual characteristics and an agreement of all the class characteristics, is that an inconclusive finding?
When you have,
Some agreement of individual characteristics
Yes.
and all class characteristics agree.
then you can say it can be a positive, inconclusive.
Okay.
Uma lana usukhuluma ngokuthi ke kunama class athile ke atholakalayo ke ungasho ukuthi ke lokho ke yebo ke iloko kubiza ngokuthi ke positive noma ukuthi ke yebo akoneleke akusona konke kodwa ke ubusufaka yena ke upositive.
The second one, when we've got an agreement again of all the class characteristics, but there's a disagreement of individual characteristics because you could not reproduce what you want to see, the striations, consistently. So because of lack of repeatability or reproducibility, you say it's inconclusive. Are we on the same term?
When you say you can see the class
The
characteristics,
class characteristics, but because on the exhibit bullet or exhibit casing, you cannot produce the same marks that you want to see on the exhibit bullet. They cannot be reproduced.
you can make it inconclusive also there.
Okay.
Nalana ke uma ukuthi ke no kunama characteristics noma kunokuthize ke okubonayo ke kodwa lokho ke akwanele nako ungasho ke ukuthi cha lana isiqiniseko asikho.
All right. Now let us talk a bit about this case, 636 of 10, 2014, the one that you started working on the 27th of October 2014. Your testimony is that you were called by Captain Bentley for assistance at 13511 Kutlano section, Mzamo section, Fosflores, where a prominent goalkeeper by the name of Mr. Robert Senzo Meyiwa was shot, correct?
That's correct, my
Yebo
lord.
kubufakazi bami ke ukuthi ngishilo ukuthi ngazo i-27 October 2014 ila ngathola khona-ke ucingo libuya ke nako Captain Bentley ukuthi ke ngizolekelela ke e-13511 uHlanong Street eMzamo section.
And you-
la ekwabulawa khona-ke noZinti owaziwayo.
And your further testimony is that you attended the scene with Officer Ntini and Lieutenant Colonel Makati. Is that correct?
I think Makati was also a warrant officer or captain.
Oh,
Can't
okay.
recall.
Cabanga ngishilo ukuthi ngangihamba naye uNtini kanye naye ke uMakhati.
And these officers were from the same office as you, from the Silverton offices? Of
That's
FSA?
correct, my lord.
Okay.
Nabo ke babebuya ke kuhhovisi engisebenza kulona eSilverton.
And Mr. Ngomezulu has asked you this, but I'm going to ask you again. What were their specific roles, Makati and Ntini, those officers at the scene in assisting you?
My lord, they were there to assist me with anything if I need assistance, maybe to take measurement to, or if I need anything, I would ask them to assist me. So when I was busy
Bona
analyzing the scene.
ukuba khona kwabo ke lapho kwakuwukuthi ke bazongilekelela noma bangisize ke uma kuwukuthi ke ikhona ke into engidinga ukuthi bangisize ngayo.
And regarding their assistance, do you know if both of them made statements or made entries in their, if they were warrant officers, they obviously have diaries. Do you know if they made any entries regarding their involvement at the scene?
Any entries in their diaries?
In their diaries or written statements, whatever notation, recordal that they made.
My lord, if I take my colleagues with me to assist me in the crime scene, I'm the one who's doing the reconstruction or the examination. I'm the one who's going to submit the statement. They don't submit the statement
Alright.
because they're only there to assist me.
Uma kuwukuthi ke ngihamba nozakwethu la engiyosebenza khona ke imina ke ozofike asebenzeke khona lapho imina ozothi afake istatement akusibona.
And you arrive at the scene, you find Captain Bentley together with a myriad of other police officers. Did you there and then speak to Captain Bentley, or you just announced your arrival to him and then you waited to the side?
My lord, as I said, they were busy processing the crime scene when I arrived. I only informed him that I'm here, I've already arrived, but they can finish first with their processing and then I'll.
Uma ngifika ke ngishilo ke ukuthi ke kwaba ukusho nje ukuthi sengikhona ke bona ke sebengaqeda ke ngaloko abakwenzayo.
And normally, I know that with LCRC that when they come and they are the second responders, the first responders were uniformed officers. One of the uniformed officers will take the LCRC officer through a walkthrough of the scene before processing. Did anyone take you through the walkthrough of the scene? Either Captain Bentley or here Bentley refers to Masumbuka, who took you through the scene.
My lord, I can't recall who took me through the scene because, as I said, before I entered this, when I was on the door, they've told me that they have 2 shots fired, but they cannot locate the other bullet hole or bullet damage. Then where I was standing, I could see that mark on the tire. I pointed at them as, there's another bullet mark that we are looking for.
Angikhumbule ukuthi ukhona ke noma kwakubanike umuntu ke owahamba nami ke engitshengisa ke kwindawo yesigameko kodwa ngishilo ukuthi inkathi ke ngime khona ke esicabheni lapha bangitshela ukuthi ke isibhamu saqhuma kabili kodwa ke ababoni ukuthi eyesibili yashaya kuphi ngase kwindawo engangime kuyona ke ngase ngiyabatshengisa ke ukuthi enye inhlamvu yashaya khona lapha.
And at any stage or at some stage before you conducted your trajectory examination, your crime scene reconstruction, did Captain Bentley brief you now about what had transpired there?
What I knew was that there was a shooting and then the deceased was shot inside the house. The shooting occurred in the house and those are the only marks that we found.
Engikwaziyo mina ukuthi ke kwadutshuka noma kwadutshulwa khona laphayana ukuthi ke uma ufike wadutshulela noma washonela khona ke endlini futhi ke nama marks ekhona laphaya.
But who told you that? Was it Captain Bentley?
My lord, I cannot recall whether it was him or somebody who was with him because he was there as to oversee this crime scene management team that was on the scene.
Angisakhumbuli noma kwakuyena-ke uBentley noma kwakuwomunye-ke owayenaye ngoba wayelaphaya yena-ke ukuthi-ke abheke-ke kulapho ababelapho-ke laba bizwa ukuthi-ke i-crime scene management.
Okay. And if Captain Bentley would be called to this court and say he personally briefed you, you wouldn't dispute that, correct?
I wouldn't dispute that.
Okay.
Uma engeza-ke la inkantolo noma engabizwa-ke lana asho athi kwaba uyena-ke umuntu owangichazela-ke angeke ngikuphikise lokho.
My Lord, I request clarity. But when they say briefed you, brief about what?
About the scene, what had transpired and what you are required to assist them with.
He couldn't even see whether there was a second bullet, Bentley. He had to tell him that there's a second bullet there on the floor. I'm just mentioning it, that Bentley is a lay person as far as ballistics are concerned. From what he says, he's on the scene. He says he knows that he's told that there were 2 bullets fired, but he can't find the second bullet where it was fired. And he comes there, stands, and says, oh, this is where the second bullet was fired at. Am I correctly interpreting?
That's correct, my Lord.
Yiko longo engishilo vele ukuthi ngafika-ke laphaya
Bentley.
wangitshela uBentley ukuthi akazi ukuthi inhlawumbe yesibili kuphi noma ishaye kuphi yaba yimina-ke umuntu omtshengisayo ukuthi ishaye kuphi yashaya kuphi yesibili.
Okay. And you were informed, because the court now talks about you were told they can't find the second bullet. So we are talking about sequence of bullets. Were you told that another bullet was already found?
Not the bullet, the impact, the bullet damage on the floor.
You saw the bullet damage.
Fragment was found and the other bullet was found, but they could only find the 1 bullet damage on the door.
Okay.
But that one on the tile, they couldn't find it, or they were not aware that it's a bullet mark.
Ayisibona ukuthi-ke inhlamvu ababengayitholile bayithola-ke kanye naleyo futhi-ke eyayilimeleke kodwa bathola nje ukuthi kulimele isicabha ukuthi okwesibili-ke yiyiphi indawo yesibili elimele yikona-ke lokho bengakuboni engabakhombisa kona.
And after the processing of the scene by Musia, Sergeant Musia and Warrant Officer Mutlatlo, were you shown the exhibits, especially, let me be frank and brutal, the forensic, the ballistic evidence that they collected on the scene? Did they
Yes,
show
I
you?
saw it on the scene, my Lord.
Okay.
Yebo-ke emuva kokuthi-ke umsiya-ke kanye naye umhlahlo-ke besebenzileke lapho yebo ubufakazi-ke lobo babulapho ngabona khona lapho kwindawo yesigameko.
And then, upon their finishing, and when I say they are Mutlatlo, Musia and others who were processing the scene, then you take over, you do your scene reconstruction, your trajectory reconstruction.
My Lord, what I did there, only took measurements of, took photos of the position of that
Yes.
bullet mark and the bullet damage on the door, and I took the measurement. There was not much to do on the scene.
Kwakungekho okuningi-ke engakwenza-ke lapho kwakuwukuthi nje thatha isithombe-ke salokhu limalo kwakusesicabheni nalokho kwakuphansi-ke nokuthi ngikale-ke futhi akukho okuningi kwafanele ngikwenze.
Did you personally find or observe any bullet or fired projectile, casing, whatever related to ballistics on the 27th of October at the scene?
My Lord,
Did you find and remove?
My Lord, the bullet fragment that was there and the bullet that was there were already collected by Warrant Officer Mutlatlo and Musia. They were already in the sealed bag, and those are the only exhibits which were at the scene. When you search the scene, you couldn't find anything else.
Inhlamvu-ke kanye nenye-ke inhlamvu lena kwakuyona-ke ngathi-ke yayilimeleke babe sebeyitholile-ke futhi ifakiwe-ke kwisikhwama sezobufakazi-ke akukho kunye-ke okwatholwa-ke noma okubheka-ke khona lapho.
Yeah, but the question that I'm asking is that you personally did not remove any ballistic evidence on the 27th that you took away from the scene?
No.
Mina-ke abukho-ke ubufakazi obuphathelene nazo-ke ibhamu noma-ke iy'nhlamvu engabuthatha-ke mina khona lapha kwindawo yesigameko.
And then on the 28th of October 2014, you, together with Warrant Officer Mutlatlo, attend the post-mortem at the Jimiston Pathology Center. Is that correct?
That's correct, my Lord.
Kuyiqiniso-ke ukuthi ngeyi-28 zika-October 2014 mina-ke kanye naye-ke owaye-warrant officer uMhlahlo sasesiya ke emakhazeni eGermiston.
And the examinations that you conducted there, or your participation there, is captured in paragraph 9 to 11 of your exhibit X13 capital A or X13A, which is the first affidavit of 22 pages. But we are not going to go there because it's not pertinent for my cross-examination. I'm just putting to you that you conducted certain duties at the postmortem as well.
That's correct, my lord.
Yes.
Yebo kuqiniso khona ukuthize ke ngakwenza ke lapha ngalelo langa langa 28 October 2014 khona emakhazeni eGermiston.
Now, just before I move on again, let's return back to the issue of Captain Bentley. Your testimony is that you were told that two shots were fired inside the kitchen. Were you also told about a third bullet that was shot by Captain Bentley?
A third bullet fired
Yes.
by... No, I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
Akukho ke engikwaziyo ke mayelana nalokho ngibuza ukuthi ke khona ke la isibhamu saqhuma khona ke ihlandla lesithathu.
My Lord, I've got the statement of Captain Alan Mark Bentley, commissioned on the 3rd of December 2014. The commissioner is, they've helped me out, B.G. Jones. It's A82 of Foslora 63610-2014. And then the CSI-CR number is 143/2014. I'd like just to read this statement on record. You don't have. Lieutenant Colonel, do you have the statement of Captain Bentley?
No, I don't have that statement.
Okay, I'll ask Sergeant Mohola to assist us. We'll revert to this point once we find that statement, because I don't have a copy thereof here. I've only got my copy. Do you have it? Can I read it? My Lord, would it be proper for me, let me get the court's direction. If I read the statement on record, then when we find, we'll refer the captain to
Yeah,
it. Okay.
I mean, you're going to hand it up anyway.
Yes.
So you can read whatever you want to put to this
Okay.
witness, if you say.
Okay, thank you, my Lord. I mean, that's it. The statement reads as follows. Alan Mark Bentley states under oath in English, I'm a captain in the South African Police Service stationed at the Gauteng CR and CSI team, Johannesburg Central, with telephone number that I'm not going to read on record. On 2014-10-27 at 8, I was requested to attend to a murder scene at 13511 Kotalong Street, Vosloorus. I was informed that the deceased was a well-known soccer player, Senzo Meyiwe. On the above-mentioned date, at approximately 9:10, which is in the morning, the CSI team arrived at the scene and were received by the duty officer of Springs LCRC, Captain Masombuka. During a short briefing between Captain Masombuka, Constable Musia, and the Gauteng CSI team, it was confirmed that the shooting incident happened on the previous night, the 26th of October 2014 at 2000 hours. It was also established that Lieutenant Matebula and Constable Musia of Springs LCRC had started processing the scene and had collected certain exhibits. The allegations, as indicated by Captain Masombuka during the briefing, was that unknown men entered the premises and demanded money and cell phones. There was an altercation between the robbers and the deceased in the kitchen of the premises, and 3 shots were allegedly fired. It is alleged that 2 shots were fired inside the kitchen, and the other one as the suspects were fleeing. The deceased stumbled to the lounge area and fell. He was then rushed to hospital where he died. A decision was taken during the briefing or to investigate the scene as if no investigation was done. During the first walkthrough of the scene, Captain Masombuka indicated the place on the kitchen floor where a bullet point was discovered and collected by Constable Musia. He further also indicated to me a bullet hole on the inside of the kitchen door. During the walkthrough, another bullet point was discovered on the countertop in the kitchen behind the containers in close proximity to the bullet hole in the door. I contacted Captain Mangena telephonically and informed him that we needed his assistance on the crime scene. Warrant Officer Titim Tlatlo from the Gauteng CSI was identified as the member responsible for processing of the scene. The CSI team then proceeded to process the scene, assisting Warrant Officer Mutlatlo with the identification, collection, and documentation of potential evidence. On arrival of the ballistic team, Captain Mangena was briefed by myself. His team then proceeded to examine the scene. He also indicated to me that he would be attending the postmortem of the deceased. I undertook to indicate place, date, and time to him. A decision was also made that Warrant Officer Mutlatlo of the Gauteng CSI and Constable Musia of Springs LCRC would attend the postmortem of the deceased on the 28th of October 2014 for the purpose of documentation, which included photography and collection of additional evidence. It is sworn and attested to, like I said, on the 3rd of December 2014, and the Commissioner of Oaths is B.G. Jones. Now, what I was putting to you, and you've also correctly said that your observation is that, and the physical evidence points you to 2 bullets inside the kitchen, and then you didn't see anything that indicates that there was a 3rd bullet fired in the vicinity of the kitchen, correct?
That's correct.
Kuyiqiniso ngishilo ke ukuthi mina ke kubufakazi babukhona ke ngabona lapho ukuthi ke kwadutshulwa ke amahlandla amabili akukho ke okwakuyinkomba kusho ukuthi ke sasikhona ke la kukhona ihlandla lesithathu.
Now, according to the statement that I've just read of Captain Bentley, a 3rd shot was allegedly fired, so we are not sure whether, according to this statement, whether it was inside the house or outside the house, because it says 1 shot was fired as the suspects were fleeing, right?
That's correct, Lord.
Yebo kuyiqiniso ngokwestatement lesi siyasho ke noma uyasho ke uBentley ukuthi ke siphindile saphuma futhi ke isibhamu ngenkathi ke laba abangena ke endlini sebebaleka ke asinasiqiniseko noma lokho kwenzeka endlini noma ke ngaphandle.
And these statements seem to agree with the evidence that was led by Ms. Zandile Khumalo in this court, who said when they were in the kitchen, as the altercation is going on, or the struggle is going on between the intruders and the people that were in the house, a 1st shot went off, hit the tile floor, and then one of the shrapnel or a piece of fragment hit her ankle. And she then ran to the bathroom where she went to hide herself. Whilst in the bathroom, she heard a 2nd shot, which was louder as like the first one, and then later on, or immediately, I don't know the sequence, she then heard a 3rd shot, which was a bit duller in sound. So she heard 3 shots, and Bentley also talks about 3 shots, but we don't know where the 3rd shot was fired.
That's correct, Malo. That's what this statement is saying.
Okay, thank you.
Lana ke manje lokhu esikufundile ke noma engikufundile ke lana kuyahambisana ke nalokhu okushiwo uyena ke noma okwashiwo uyena uZandile Khumalo nkathi ethuka ubufakazi ke bakhe la enkantolo ukuthi ke saqhuma ke okoqala isibhamu ila esashaya phansi ke waseyashaya ke naye waseyabaleka ke eyakhona ke ebathroom saphinda ke futhi saqhuma ke ihlandla lesibili la ethi khona ke saqhuma ke ngaphezulu kwalela loqala ke washo-ke futhi ukuthi siqhumile futhi-ke okwesithathu-ke manje esithi-ke sesingasabangi umsindo njengalawo mahlandla amabili-ke uthi yebo yiloko kushiwo isona-ke lesi statement.
And my lord, this statement is clear on this paragraph, where it says, it is alleged that 2 shots were fired inside the kitchen and the other one as the suspects were fleeing. So inside the house, it's clear, it says 2 shots were fired inside the house.
Futhi-ke kucacile-ke lana ngokwendlela-ke ekubhalwe ngayo kulesi statement ukuthi-ke bayasho-ke ukuthi-ke isibhamu saqhuma amahlandla amabili ngaphakathi ekhishini esodwa-ke ngale nkathi sebebaleka.
Yes. Now, earlier on, I asked you if you personally had removed any piece of exhibit or projectile, cartridge casing, anything ballistically related, and you were adamant that you did not, correct?
That's correct, my lord.
Ngikubuzile-ke ngaphambilini ukuthi wena-ke kukhona yini owakususa noma owakuthatha-ke okufakazi waphendula-ke wathi cha yebo kuyiqiniso lokho.
My lord, with leave of the court, I'd like to refer Lieutenant Mangena to another statement, which is A6 of Fosluaras Cas 636 of 10/2014, which is the statement of AB Sifularo Montwedi. It was commissioned on the 24th of November 07 at 12, and the commissioning officer is Sibonelo Mkize, the Fosluaras officer, detective sergeant. With leave of the court again, my lord, let me do the exercise so that we don't waste the court's time by reading the contents of the statement. It reads at paragraph 1, I, ABC Fularo Montwedi, state, I under oath in English. Paragraph 2, I am a warrant officer, service number that I'm not going to read, on record, stationed at Provincial Investigation Unit, cell number I'm not going to place on record. Paragraph 3, on the 24th of 10/27 at 9, I visited the scene of crime, home number 13511, Fosluaras. My lord, the handwriting is a doctor's handwriting, so I'm going to struggle. 4, the incident of the shooting happened on the 24/10/26, but I visited the scene on the 24/10/27 at 9. When I arrived at the scene, was ballistic expert Captain Mangena of and a photographer, warrant officer Mkhatlo, who took some photos. Captain Mangena took exhibit of spent cartridge that was found on the door frame. No one tampered with the scene whilst I was on the scene. Photos and exhibits were taken in my presence.
Sorry. He says he took an exhibit.
Yeah, he says, let me read.
What is an exhibit?
He says, sorry, my lord.
At the door frame.
He says, let me read again, my lord. He says, Captain Mangena took exhibit of a spent cartridge that was on the door frame.
Yeah, okay.
And then he says, paragraph is the attestation. I know the contents, and like I said, it's properly commissioned as well. Do you know who this person is?
I don't know that.
Ingabe uyamazi yini lo muntu lona engifunda istatement sakhe sifularo ucha ke angimazi lo muntu loyo ufunda ke lapha indawo noma kule statement ke uyasho ukuthi ke ucaptain kwaso captain ke Mangena ngaleso sikhathi wathatha ke igobolondo elisebenzile noma ke eselisetshenzisiwe khona lapho indawo yesigameko.
Yes, but you see, according to this evidence, sorry, it's not evidence. According to this statement, he says, you took a spent cartridge that was, Mangena took an exhibit of spent cartridge that was found on the door frame.
On which date, my lord?
The 27th of October. He says, I visited the scene on the 27th of November at 9 a.m.
November.
Sorry, the 27th of October, the following day, after the day when you were also.
When I was there, the scene.
Yes.
My lord, as I have mentioned, we don't collect exhibits from the crime scene.
But you took it from the door frame.
I don't know any exhibit like that.
Bese ngishilo ke kubufakazi bami ke ukuthi
In other words, as I
thina
understand
siwathathe
it, sorry,
indawo
sorry, as I
zesibhamu.
understand it, that bullet didn't pierce. When I looked at the photos, it appears as if when you were giving evidence and the reconstruction, that it went askance, pierced the door frame,
That's correct.
ricocheted because the energy was diminished and it was tumbling.
And actually, it hit the door, not the door frame.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah,
but
but-
apparently it was there, like a pitch on a tree.
Yes.
Just
Yes. That's according to this
Yeah.
statement. So you said you don't agree with this.
I don't agree with it
And-
because,
and-
my lord, I've mentioned it. When I go to a crime scene, LCRC is there, crime scene management there. It's their mandate to collect all the exhibits from the crime scene.
Okay.
I don't collect exhibits. Why will I collect that one and leave the other exhibits if I
bese-
collected those exhibits?
Uma kuwukuthi ke lawo mazibiti lawo ngawathatha ke kungani ke ngizothatha nje lelo lodwa amanye ngiwashiye ke ngishilo ke kubufakazi bami ukuthi ke uma LCRC bekhona ke lapho yibona ke abantu ekuyibona abathatha amazibiti noma ubufakazi bahambe nabo mina ke akusona kwami ukuthi ngihambe nobufakazi.
Yeah, but what Montwedi says, he'll answer for himself that question. I'm not going to answer that. But he says this exhibit was taken in his presence and he's a warrant officer at the Provincial Investigation Unit. Why would he make that allegation?
I don't know, and it's for the first time I hear that, my lord.
Angikwazi ke ukuthi kungani zokusho lokho futhi ngiyaqala ke ukuzwa.
Now, the projectiles that were found on the scene, that is the disintegrated one, the damaged one, and the one that was not completely damaged. You say they were FMJ bullets, I'm sorry, CMJ bullets, correct?
That's correct, my lord.
Ngishilo ke ukuthi ke inhlamvu ke kanye nalena enye futhi ke kwaseyinhlamvu manje sengasapheleleke seyilimele kwakuwa ama CMJ.
Now, for me, CMJ, FMJ is gobbledygook. It's Chinese to me. Explain the differences and the makings, the composition of each of those bullets. What is FMJ? How is it composed? How is it its firing power? I'm not sure what those mean.
My lord, when you look at the FMJ, it's a full metal jacket. These bullets are normally what the police are using on their firearms. They are using full metal jacket manufactured by PMP. It's a lead covered by a strong copper, but it's open at the back. And if you look at the CMJ is a soft lead covered by a very thin layer of copper, and it's completely covered.
Uma sikhuluma ngayo ke FMJ yona ke yenziwa uPMP futhi ke la ngasemuva ke ivulekile ke futhi ilezi esetshenziswa wona amaphoyisa ke amahlandla amaningi noma isetshenziswa amaphoyisa bese kuthi ke yona ke iCMJ yona ke uma uyiqhathanisa nayo ke iFMJ ithambile ke yona ke futhi ke yona ke ivaliwe njengoba iFMJ ivulekile la ngasemuva.
And basically the CMJ, it's a cheap bullet and it's very soft, it breaks easily compared to the FMJ. FMJ is a strong bullet.
Futhi ke yona ke iCMJ ibullet ke noma inhlamvu ke ongathi ke yona ke ishibhile noma ke iship kakhulu ke futhi ke ithambile yona ke uma uyiqhathanisa nayo ke iFMJ.
And for the fragmented or the damaged one, I'm just asking it for my clarification in the back of my mind. How did you determine that that was also a CMJ?
I looked at the jacket of the copper jacket of it. It's a thin copper jacket of it, and it's more of a lead than.
Ukuthi ke ngithole ke nalena ke elimele inhlamvu uma isengasapheleleke ukuthi nayo iCMJ ngabheka ke lo akubiza ngokuthi ufakazi ke i-copper jacket yakhona.
Okay, now let's talk to, and I'm going to refer you now to this, to your exhibits. Let me refer you to exhibit X13B. That will be your second affidavit. I believe, just in summary, because I don't want to belabor the points that are not necessary for my cross-examination, but for record purposes, I must place them on record as well in my cross-examination. That one, if I'm correct, do you have it, Colonel Mangena? Exhibit X13B, your second affidavit, I believe is the one that deals with the Beretta that was a non-match. Is that the one?
Yeah, I have it, but it's page missing on that one. Let me check. Yeah, I have it here with me.
Do you have it? I believe you said the firearm concerned was a 9mm Parabellum Beretta Model FS. Those are the charts. Are your documents marked as per in alliance with the markings here in court, Captain, or is that your file? Because if you are looking at your file and it's not marked, it's going to confuse you. It's the second affidavit. I think it was deposed. Yeah, that's good. Let me see 5. Sorry, my lord. I think he's missing a page. Sorry. Yeah, it's been assistance. Have we
On
found
paragraph 3.
It's on paragraph 3.
Okay.
That's the one that refers to the. I don't want us to go verbatim with the contents. They are already on record. I just want to sum up and move on to another aspect. Is that the one that deals with the Beretta, the one that Mr. Mgomezulu was cross-examining you about, that it belonged to Mr. Twala? Is that the one?
No, it's not this one.
It's not this one. It's a 5-page affidavit, Colonel Mangena. And you are correct. It starts on paragraph 3, where you say, on the 13th of November, during the performance of my official duties, I received 2 sealed evidence bags, and you mentioned the bag numbers from the ballistic administration system, and then 3.1 is one 9mm Parabellum P Beretta Model 92 FS.
The date?
It says paragraph 3 thereof at page 3 of 5.
13th November.
On the 13th of November, yes.
Yes, I have this one.
Yes, thank you. Now, you've testified that you were given this firearm to compare or for elimination purposes, correct?
That's correct.
Ngishilo ukuthi lesibhamu lesi-ke esinamilimitha ngasinikwa-ke ukuthi ngisibhekeke uma kuwukuthi ngathola ukuthi-ke akukho okuhlanganisayo ngisikhipheke.
And then your findings was that that firearm did not fire our, and when I say our, I mean the exhibit bullet in this case, correct?
That's correct, my lord.
Yebo ngishilo ukuthi ngathola ukuthi leso sibhamu akuyisona-ke esadubula-ke le nhlamvu eyatholakala-ke le ekhulunywa ngayo kulona leli cala.
And when you make a finding of elimination, do you also have to have that peer reviewed by somebody else one of your colleagues or from outside who is in ballistics to confirm or differ with your findings? Was it peer-reviewed, that finding?
That's correct, my lord.
Kuyiqiniso-ke ukuthi uma sengifikilela kuleso sinqumo-ke noma sengithola ukuthi akusona lesi, ukhona-ke omunye engisebenza naye noma uzakwethu naye-ke ozobheka lokho engikutholile-ke abe eseyaqinisekisa noma uyaqinisekisa noma uyaphikisa-ke.
Okay. Like I said, I'm not going to belabor on that firearm because it was a non-match. Now, your further testimony is that you are then called by Colonel Gininda. For the purpose of this cross, I'll say Colonel Gininda because he was still a colonel back then, to do certain, first he calls you and says, can you perhaps determine by measuring the height of certain persons of suspect, of interest for me to determine whether or not they could possibly be the shooter in this Phosphorus 63610 of 2014 case, correct?
That's correct, my lord.
Kubufakazi bami-ke ukuthi yebo ngase ngishayela ucingo uyena-ke uKennel waye-uKennel-ke ngalesi sikhathi uGinyindi ukuthi-ke ngizobheka-ke noma ngikala abantu abathile ukubheka-ke ukuthi ngaba yibona yini abadubula.
Colonel, for me, what is intriguing is this. In other cases, and you've done thousands of cases, I'm not going to doubt your expertise. I'm not here to do that. You've done thousands of examinations, bullets, firearms, tools, whatever. Do you normally do this exercise of measuring people's heights and whatever, unless in exceptional circumstances where some person was on a stump? So it makes sense that because he's wearing prosthesis, you can measure him to determine where he was shooting. But in ordinary cases, like this case, do you normally go and measure people at police stations, their heights and whatever things you need to do?
My lord, it depends on the investigating officer. What does he want to assist with? Yes. If he wants to assist with the height, we'll do that. Yes. And if the allegations that he's having needs something like a proof whether the height of this person can it be consistent. We have instances where maybe somebody sustained a gunshot wound, where you have to relate it with maybe a bullet hole or something. You have to get the measurements. We do that if the IO request us to do that.
Siyakwenza-ke lokho ukuthi-ke uqale-ke ubheke umuntu-ke ukuthi ungakanani kubheke ukuthi uyena noma yibona yini abadubula kuya ngokuthi-ke lowo ophenya icala-ke yini ayifunayo-ke noma-ke mhlambi iy'nsolo anazo zithini-ke ukubheka lokho uma kuwukuthi-ke yilokho akucelayo yebo siyakwenza.
If I understood, one of your answers from the cross-examination of Mr. Mgomezulu yesterday was, when he was asking you about the ownership of this firearm, the Beretta that I've just said, I touch on and I leave. When he was asking you about the ownership, your answer was that you don't deal with ownerships and the like. You only deal with ballistic evidence, right?
That's correct, Madam.
Kuyiqiniso uma ngibuzwa uyena-ke uMr Mgomezulu izolo engibuza-ke ngomnikazi kwalesi siphamu ngishilo ngathi-ke ukuthi umnikazi ubani lokho-ke angisebenzi ngakho kodwa mina-ke ubufakazi-ke ekufanele ngibuthole.
And similarly for me, my impression, and I'm saying my impression, was that you as a ballistic expert, you are insulated from the nitty-gritties of the case and the investigation so that you can remain partial in doing your examinations. In other words, you are insulated from the day-to-day other investigation of the case. All that you need to do is either ballistic evidence is brought and allocated to you at FSL, and then you do the examination. But the rest of you personally meeting with accused persons, trying to decipher whether or not they had shrapnel or fragment injuries or damages, defects from 2014. It's not something that you can do.
Well, we do that a lot. We have cases where a person has been shot and he sustained a gunshot wound, and they ask us, can we determine if that was a gunshot wound or was the height maybe, so that we can place the person on a crime scene. We do that on a regular basis if the IO requests us to do that.
Kulokho-ke bekubuza kona-ke uMr Mngomezulu, nami-ke bengicabanga kanjalo ukuthi wena-ke uphenyo-ke olwenziwayo mayelana necala awubikhona-ke, kodwa nje usebenza ngobufakazi omayelana ney'bhamu kanye nazo-ke nazo iy'nhlamvu, hhayi ukuthi-ke kufanele uyobheka ukuthi abasola noma abamangalelwa uma ubakala bangakanani. Uthi lokho siyakwenza-ke amalanga namalanga, abakhona-ke amaqala la khona-ke umuntu udutshuliwe, kufanele siyobheka-ke ukuthi ngempela isibhamu yini leso adutshulwa yisona lapho, ukuthi-ke siyakwenza lokho.
And the other aspect, and then I'm not going to belabor that as well, it was touched on to some length by Mr. Mngomezulu, is this one. You are a senior ballistic expert at FSL, and yet the IO sends you to say, go and fetch a particular suspect firearm from me at Cleveland. Whereas we've been told here in court by Mohani Mohola that whenever the captain wanted delegation, he'll delegate them. Why would Gininda send a senior officer of your caliber to a police station to go and pick up a firearm?
My Lord, Brigadier Gininda did not send me to go and collect the firearm.
Yes. What did he do?
I initiated only because I saw what I was looking at, that I need the firearm to shoot the additional test. I called him, I said, can I get that firearm? He said, no, the firearm was booked back at the CPT. He said, no, I'll go look for it because I know what type of a firearm it is. I know where to look for it. The firearm, at first, it did not have the serial number. So if I go to the station to look for it, I know where to look for it to confirm that this is the right firearm. That's why I decided to go and fetch it.
Akusiyena uGininda umuntu owangithuma ukuthi angiye eCleveland ngiyolanda isibhamu leso. Yimina into eyaphuma kumina-ke ukuthi angihambe ngiye lapho, ngoba-ke ngangiyibheka noma ngingakuthola-ke lokho engangikubheka, ngase mina-ke ngimshayela ucingo-ke ukuthi uGininda ukuthi ngiyasifuna-ke leso sibhamu ukuthi ngisivivinye-ke noma ngisibheke-ke kufanele ngisisebenzise noma ngidubule ngaso. Wase ngitshela yena-ke ukuthi-ke isibhamu sise-Cleveland. Yimina-ke umuntu owayihambela-ke ngazi ukuthi isibhamu leso asinayo i-serial number, ngiyazi-ke ukuthi ngizosithola kuphi nendawo. Kwaba yimina-ke, kwaba yinto ephuma kumina.
And my Lord, if the firearm was with the owner, I said it yesterday, if the firearm was with the owner or was with the company, I wouldn't even go and fetch it. I would tell him that I will request that firearm to shoot additional tests. So it was for him to go and fetch it if it was with the firearm, with the owner or the company. But because it's in police custody, I can sign for it out of the 13, shoot the test, and then take it back.
Ngikushilo-ke lokhu futhi nayizolo-ke ukuthi uma kuwukuthi isibhamu sasikubunikazi noma-ke kwinkampani, ngangizoxhumana naye-ke ngimtshele-ke ukuthi isibhamu leso ngiyasidinga-ke, ngifuna-ke ukuthi ngidubule ngaso, kodwa ngoba-ke isibhamu sasise-police station, ngayihambela ngayo police station, ngiyasayinela kwi-SAP 13, ngiyasitesta futhi ngiyaphinda ngiyasibuyisela-ke.
Now, like I said, I'm not going to belabor that point. I was just passing this point that you personally attend to a police station to pick up an exhibit, but let's not belabor that. Your further evidence is that now Captain Gininda also gave you a case number 96-2 of 2015, and with that you went onto your system and then you found that it had a lab number related to it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yebo kuyiqiniso-ke ukuthi-ke kunale case number amnika yona-ke ewu-962 ka-2015, ngase mina uma ngiyibheka-ke ngathola ukuthi ine-lab number.
And the lab number that was attached to that case, if I'm correct, is LAB 34369 of 15. Is that correct?
That is correct, my Lord.
Uma yebo-ke leyo lab number-ke kwaku 34369 of 15.
And your further testimony is that the said lab number 34369 of 2015 was received by Warrant Officer Rulofse, who examined the exhibit firearm, exhibit 4 in this case, right?
That's correct, my Lord.
Ubufakazi bami-ke ukuthi-ke leyo lab number leyo yatholakala noma kwakuyena u-Warrant Officer Rulofse okwakuyena-ke owavivinyaka noma-ke leso sibhamu edubula ngaso.
And Rulofse conducted the examination, which are the test fires, right, which is 369 TC1 and 2 and 369 TB1 and 2.
That's correct, my lord.
Ubona ke u3C1, T6 1 and 2 not 3 TCR
369.
369
TB2.
and TB2 no TB1 yes.
And just for clarification, for those that are confused by the TB and TC, the TC stands for test cartridge 1 and test cartridge 2, right?
That's correct, my lord. When we shoot a test for comparison, or
Yes.
what we'll do is on your cartridge case, the cartridge cases, you mark them with the last 3 digits of the lap number.
Yes.
And then TC1 is test cartridge 1 or test cartridge 2. And on the bullet, it will be the last 3 digits of the lap number, and then it's TB1 or TB2.
Lana ke uTC lana ke ukhuluma khona ngegobolondo ama number elef awugcina ke amathathu bese sithi ke uTC1 uma sikhuluma ngayo ke inhlamvu uTB test a bullet nama number awugcina ke amathathu ayo ke elef number.
And your testimony is that you then examined one firearm, which is the exhibit firearm, and the test bullets and cartridges by rule of say, and compare them whether they imparted markings, right? You compared rule of say's tests. By now you have received the firearm in this case. So you compared those to the exhibit firearm, rule of say's examination.
I compared the test,
The test fires of rule of say
yes,
to determine whether or not they were fired from the same firearm.
rule of test.
Yes.
Yes, I did that, my lord.
Engakwenza ke ukubheka ke loku ama test ke enziwa uyena ke ulose ukubheka ke ukuthi ke adutshula noma aphuma yini kwisibhamu esisodwa.
And then if I understood you well, you said that upon examination, you determined that the class characteristics were discernible, but the individual or striations were not that discernible because of the nature of the bullets that were used in rule of say's test fires. That is, rule of say fired FMJs, correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
Futhi ngashilo ke ukuthi ngenxa yokuthi ke udolose yena ke manje ke kwakukhona ke la ekuhluka khona ke ngoba ke udolose yena ke wayesebenzise le inhlamvu lezi ze FMJ.
Then you then yourself commenced with your own examination now of the test firearms. I mean, the test fire, the exhibit firearm, and then you conduct, firstly, a testing with FMJs so that you can see whether the replication and reproducibility of the marks on FMJs fired by rule of say were there. Did you fire FMJ bullets yourself?
Yes,
as
I
part
did
of the
fire
test?
the FMJ bullet.
Okay.
Yebo nami ke ngasebenzisa wona nami ke ngatesta ke noma ngisebenzisa wona ke ama bullets la noma inhlamvu lezi ze FMJ.
And if I understood your evidence further, is that because FMJs are a hardcore bullet, you decided to fire bullets similar to those that were fired at the scene, i.e. CMJs, correct?
That's correct, my lord.
Ngishilo ke ukuthi ke ngathi ngase ngithi ke ngoba ke ama FMJ wona ke ahlukile ke kona ama CMJ ngase ngithi ngisebenzise ke inhlamvu lezi ke ezifanayo nalezi ezasetshenziswa ke kwindawo yesigameko ama CMJ.
Now, how many FMJs did you fire, test fire yourself?
From rule to compare.
During all your
rule of-
testing?
My lord, I fired 8 rounds,
Yes.
eight tests.
Yes.
And of the 8 tests, I think 2 tests were the FMJ, and then the other 6 were the CMJs.
Ama test engawenza ke aba u8. Amabili kuona ke kwama test FMJ awu6 ke ngawe CMJ.
And now I'm talking about the rule of say FMJs that you fired. And correct me if I'm wrong as well. The class characteristics on the FMJs are discernible. On the bullet, forget about casings because we're not talking about casings in this case. The discernible class characteristics are there, correct?
That's correct.
Lana uma sesikhuluma noma ke ama casings lana siwakhohlo ke kodwa ke lama noma lokho okufunayo ke lokho kubizwa ngokuthi ke ama characteristics kona kukhona.
And did you observe some of the also similar striations on the FMJs, the rule of ones?
That's correct, my lord.
Nokuthi ke ngabona ke lokho okubizwa ngokuthi ke ama striations afanayo ke kule noma kulama test yakhe uRolofse.
Now, having seen the similar or discernible class characteristics and some individual characteristics, what were your findings?
My findings were that, my lord, I am convinced it's the same firearm that Rulofs tested.
Lokho ke kwasebengiholele ekuthini ke manje ngithole ke ukuthi lesi isona ke isibambu lesi esatestwa uyena uRolofse.
Now, let's come to your actual tests now. We've done Rulofs FMJs, the two, your two FMJs. Let's come to the 6 CMJs. Right? Now, you label your test TC1 369, TC3 to 369, TC10, correct?
That's correct.
The numbers TC1.
In fact, let's use TC1 and TC3 to TC10, because if we continue to say 369 T1,
TC.
it traps the language. So TC3 to TC10.
Okay. Wona ke ama test lawo engawasebenzisa ke ukusuka ke na TC3 kufika ke TC10.
Sorry, are they referred to like that
It's so sorry, my lord.
in your evidence, in your affidavit?
In my affidavit, my lord, is
369.
369 TC3 to 369 TC10.
Okay. But is the court comfortable that we cut off the 369 because it trips the tongue, or should we, for record purposes, put the 369 as well?
No, fine, as long as he agrees that it's
Okay.
the same.
Okay. And then your bullets are marked 369 TB3 to TB10, correct?
That's correct.
Bese amawuka ke uTB 1 u369 ukusuka ke ku1 kuyofika ke ku10.
And you said those CMJs that you find, the 6 ones, are of different manufacture or are marketed for different companies. You mentioned one of the companies as PNP. What were the other companies that you testified the CMJs for?
The CMJ is not PMP. It was NGA, and the others were from Cellular and Bellot.
Okay.
Cellular and Bellot and NGA.
Oh, okay.
NGA yila ngithi ke ilawa benza ke bona ama CMJ. uCMJ angishongo ukuthi ke bona benziwa uPMP.
Also, let me clear it because I misunderstand this. So if I misspeak, you must correct me. So the PNPs are FMJs.
That's correct.
Okay.
Ama FMJ wona ke enziwa uPMP.
Now, there's this what you used, and we've spoken about it earlier on. You examine, compare, and come to a finding. And when you come to a finding, you'll say it's a match, right?
That's correct, my lord.
Lana ke manje uma sewuqhathanisa ke ekugcineni usuyathola ukuthi yebo kuyahlangana.
Now, before we go further with to the charts and everything, there is in your industry what is referred to as a known match, and also what is referred to as a known non-match. A known match, known non-match. What are those for clarification?
When you speak of known match, my lord, we are speaking of an ID that you can see where you know that you shoot the test, you compare your own test, and with the test that you compare, you can get an ID, you know that these firearms, these exhibits were fired in the same firearm. And it's a known match because we are the one who fired the test. And in a,
Sorry. Uma ke sesikhuluma ngayo ke known match loma ke eyaziwayo ukuthi yila uqhathanisa khona ke kule test eyenziwe ke nawe futhi oyenzayo ke ubone ukuthi cha lana isibhamu esisodwa esisetshenzisiwe ke lana uyakwazi lokho ngoba uwena umuntu okwenzile lokho.
My Lord, I think we should pack or finish up the non-match, then we can pack it.
In the known non-matches, where you compare bullets that you know that they were fired in two different firearms, or it can be firearms which were manufactured one after the other. There are similarities, but you know from those that, because you know the tests were fired by you, or you know who fired the test, and you know that they were fired in two different firearms. It's a known non-match.
Kokunye noma lokho kwesibili ke la wazi khona ke ukuthi manje sikhuluma ngezibhamu ezimbili ezahlukile noma ke akusona isibhamu esisodwa esadlula lana kodwa izibhamu ezimbili ezihlukile.
So in a non-match, we know that those firearms, for example, the example that you're giving, they are not supposed to match. The bullets are not supposed to match fired from two different firearms.
Well, there can be similarities, but there will always be differences. You can see the similarities because they were manufactured probably one after the other. They're produced by the same tool. So the markings from that same tool will be, somewhere will be the same. But in the process of manufacturing that, because of wear and tear of the tools that they're using, will create another marks which will be unique to a specific one, but not to the same one.
Lana ke esikhuluma ngako ukuthi ke asithi izibhamu ezenziwe ke kodwa ke ngokulandelelana ke kodwa uma se uthola ke noma ke ukuthi ngemiphumela ke ubone ukuthi kukhona ke okuhlukile lana ngokwalesi isibhamu kunesinye.
My Lord, I see it's 103. Is that an opportunity?
103.
Yes, my
What
Lord.
time do you come back?
At 2 o'clock, my Lord.
Okay. Mr. Ramsipid, I heard you say you don't know what FMC meant.
FMJ, full metal jacket. I don't know.
No, I don't know if you're saying
I don't
serious.
know the composition of those or the makings. my
Now I was
Lord.
going to ask you a trivial question.
Yes.
You have never heard of the movie Full
Metal
Metal
Full
Jacket
metal jacket. Yes, I have.
by
Some.
Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, I see.
Thank you, my
Something.
Lord. Sure.